Apple Music can now flag AI content, but only if distributors elect to label it. We'll talk more about it in moments, but first, you'd be forgiven for thinking that the Samsung Galaxy S26 Ultra looks a lot like the last four models. That's because it does, right down to its general design and rear camera layout. But on Samsung's latest flagship phone, some stealthy upgrades are hidden beneath its classic, blocky silhouette that might go unnoticed by the casual observer. Those help make this year's release feel like a better deal than its most recent predecessor. It remains rather expensive, starting at the same $1,300 as before, but considering the price of RAM these days, that almost feels like a blessing. So, while it won't hit you over the head with monumental changes year over year, it's subtly one of the best Ultras we've gotten in the past half-decade. While the S26 Ultra might not wow you with a ton of major improvements, it brings subtle upgrades across the board along with a new standout display for anyone who cares about privacy. Head over to Engadget.com for our full review of the Samsung Galaxy S26. On Wednesday, the White House announced that several major players in tech and AI have agreed to steps that will keep electricity costs from rising due to data centers. Under the Ratepayer Protection Pledge, companies are agreeing to practices that are intended to protect residents from seeing higher electricity costs as more and more businesses create power-hungry data centers. Amazon, Google, Meta, Microsoft, OpenAI, Oracle, and xAI have all apparently signed on. A few of the participants, Amazon, Google, and Meta, had conveniently timed press releases patting themselves on the back for their participation and touting whatever other policies they have for mitigating the negative impacts of data center construction. The pledge doesn't appear to be any form of binding agreement, and there's no discussion of enforcement or a penalty for companies that don't honor the stipulated provisions. It also doesn't address any of the other impacts data centers and AI development might be having, either on local communities, on other utilities and resources, or on access to critical computing elements like RAM. And Nothing just revealed a new pair of over-ear headphones as a relatively budget-friendly alternative to the pre-existing Headphone 1. The Headphone A earphones feature a similar design language to the company's previous cans, but with more color. As a matter of fact, these will be available in 4 colors, including yellow, pink, white, and black. Perhaps the most notable feature here, however, is the battery life. Nothing says these headphones will last over 5 days on a single charge. It claims 135 hours of life per charge. As a comparison, Sony's WH-CH520 headphones, which are praised for great battery life, last around 50 hours. Nothing boasts that the headphones can get 5 hours of juice from just 5 minutes at the outlet. We don't yet know how these things sound, which is pretty important, but we also don't have long to wait. Pre-orders are open right now, with shipments going out on March 13th for most colorways. The yellow model doesn't ship until April. They cost $200, which is much cheaper than the $300 price tag accompanying the Headphone 1. Remember, you can find the latest news, reviews, price drops, and more right now at Engadget.com. Apple Music can now flag AI content, but only if distributors elect to label it. New transparency tags allow record labels to show that music was made with the help of AI. While music streaming apps like Bandcamp, Spotify, and Deezer have taken steps to inform users about AI-generated content, we haven't heard much out of Apple Music in that regard. However, Apple Music has now introduced transparency tags designed to show listeners if any elements were generated in whole or part by AI. The catch is that Apple is leaving it up to labels and distributors to create those tags, according to an Apple newsletter to industry partners seen by music business worldwide. Proper tagging of content is the first step in giving the music industry the data and tools needed to develop thoughtful policies around AI, and we believe labels and distributors must take an active role in reporting when the content they deliver is created using AI, Apple wrote, calling it a concrete first step toward transparency around artificial intelligence. Streaming platforms already use metadata tags for things like song and album titles, genre, and the name of the artist. The new tags will now identify any artwork, tracks, compositions, and music videos created in whole or in part by AI. However, Apple's new system requires labels and distributors to opt in and manually flag their use of AI, a system that's similar to what Spotify is doing. On top of that, Apple has no apparent enforcement mechanism for AI content. By contrast, other music platforms, including Deezer and Bandcamp, are using in-house AI detection tools to flag content, whether the distributor opts in or not. Deezer disclosed in January 2026 that it receives over 60,000 fully AI-generated tracks every day, double the number it saw in September 2025. Synthetic content, also called AI slop, has accounted for 13.4 million tracks on its platform, Deezer added. Thanks for listening to the show. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Today's show featured journalism by Engadget contributors Steve Dent and Anna Washenko and was produced by Spoken Layer. I'm Imran Sheikh, and we'll talk more tomorrow.
Spoken Layer.